Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another weekly episode where we look at some book covers, talk about what makes them work, offer a few ideas on how they might be better, and then let you vote for your favorite in the link down below. Speaking of down below, there are all kinds of things down there, a like button, a bell button, a subscribe button. If you would be so kind as to click pretty much all of them, that would be awesome. As far as I go as an individual, I am your host, M.L.S. Weech. And I am an independent self-published author of paranormal, sci-fi, and epic fantasy. And if you would be so kind as to visit my author link, that is also down below, I would be grateful. See if any of that interests you and maybe pick up a copy. That would be cool. So we have some pretty big news. Usually there's typically only one thing to vote for, but we have the privilege of announcing the final January book cover of the month. I know it feels a little weird because we're barely starting, but we do 4 book covers every month, so things are starting to shift left and right. The point is, we have the last cover for January, which means you will be able to vote for your favorite book cover of all of January in the link down below, and then you can start voting for February, which is what we are going to look at after we name the winner. So without further ado, the last entry in the January book cover of the month is Eye of the Fates by A.L. Corbett. This was really clever composition, nice use of color, very interesting overall design. So congratulations and good luck. That is the final book cover in the January book cover of the month. You can watch previous episodes if you want to see thoughts on the others, and you can vote for your favorite in the link down there. And that concludes or will conclude January. That's going to be available for 2 weeks. And then we'll announce the winner. You'll have 2 weeks to vote. For this week, which we are considering for the sake of this evolution, the first of the February book cover of the month. Again, I know it can be a little confusing, but if you only do 4 a month, there are some months that have 5 weeks, so that kind of compresses some stuff and makes it a little weird. I think it'll shake out right in the end, but we are looking at the first set of covers for what we are calling the February book cover of the month, and the first cover we're going to look at is The Wind Knight by Jefferson Anders. I am a fan of unique art styles, and this particular cover has that art style. Now we see this raven, crow, blackbird on this perch, and that is the most identifiable element. We have some trees that look somewhat like swords, or tree branches that look somewhat like swords. But what you have is art that implies a idea that doesn't literally demonstrate the idea. So I like art that's very realistic and I see everything and it's super accurate. And then I like art that's abstract but still conveys a realistic idea. That's the spectrum I like. But in that spectrum, I like the absolutes of that spectrum. This combines those into one cover that I think is fascinating. I love the idea of silhouette. I like the color. I love the use of color in the text. The text is legible, and because of the title, it makes sense with the rest of the overall design. So this is a great cover. I don't actually think I would change anything. I think it's just solid all the way around, and I don't say that a whole lot. So big ups to Jefferson Anders and this book cover designer. The next book cover we're going to talk about is The Dock Side by C.T. McNamara. And it's kind of similar to this previous cover in that there's a lot of abstract symbology. This still has more detail than the previous cover. We have a masked figure standing at what I assume is some sort of dock. It's a little weird because it looks like the Star Wars Rebel Alliance symbol there. I don't know how copyright works in there or not, or I don't even know if this might be a Star Wars novel. But whatever we have going on here, we have this unique symbol behind this landscape that is dystopian or end of worldsy, if you lack a better term. I wish I had some more detail in the feet, some more separation. I know that's the direction the shadow's going, but that shadow can have detail. It's completely okay. In fact, whenever you're looking at an image, you want detail in your highlights and you want detail in your shadows. Although I will acknowledge if people have to pick one over the other, they would typically let the detail in the shadow go away because it's less important because it doesn't draw the eye as powerfully. So I love the detail in what I see in this landscape. I think the figure is pretty cool. The text is legible. It's neutral in that it's there, you can read it, it's fine, but it doesn't really add to the overall design. It just tells me the name of the book. I think almost every cover does it. I know mine do it. Very rarely does the text in a book cover apply to the overall art or the overall design. So it's not really a knock. It's just not excellent in that regard. So that's The Dockside by C.T. McNamara. And we can move on to the next particular book cover, which is Rising Shadows by A.E. King. What was her name? There's a V.E. Schwab. This kind of feels like one of her covers. It's not, obviously. This is a different author, but I like this cover for the same reason I like those covers. We have this really cool line art. We have this great framing element within the line art. We have this really cool silhouette. So we have framing, we have detailed line art, we have silhouettes, and we have spot color. Believe it or not, I normally advise against using red, especially as a font color, but when you have the contrast to allow for it, you can use red to a very powerful degree. The problem happens when people use it too much and there's not enough separation or contrast between the text and the background color. So those are when it gets nightmarish. But when designers understand the need for contrast and separation, they can get away with a thing that most people are taught to avoid, especially in a basic design course like the one I teach. So what you have here is a combination of several really neat concepts that add together to a very, very pleasing, visually dynamic cover. And I think it's fantastic. So great job on this. And, if you like it, you can vote for it in the link down below too. All right. Next cover we're going to look at, we're going to see a few profiles in the next couple images. I don't know if I see a theme in all of them, but you see a couple of this and a couple of these and a couple of those. And we're going to see a couple of profiles, starting with this one, Awakened Princess by Laura Greenwood, a USA Today bestselling author, according to the cover of this book. So the light here is beautiful. The rendering of the subject is interesting. I feel like it's a little, the knock I have on this cover is that the style and appearance of the flowers and the weeds or bushes or whatever those are, it looks distinctly different from the rendering of the castle and the other elements. The flowers don't feel like they belong with everything else. Now, if that's an aspect of the plot, then it turns out it's beautiful and wonderful. But the light on the subject doesn't match the light of the flowers. And so because that light is different, it feels like those flowers aren't in the same scene as the subject. And that's what bothers me about it. That soft light that falls on the subject and then fades in the shadow as it goes down, we don't have that same lighting effect. And as beautiful as the light on the subject is and the rendering of the subject, as cool as the castle is and the background and the foreground, those flowers are what I have umbrage with. And it's not because they're flowers, it's because they're not following the same lighting that everything else in the scene is following. And I would have recommended something be done about that, or that the flowers would go away, because it's still an awesome cover. Currently, I argue the flowers distract from it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. But that is the cover we have. And if you like it, it doesn't matter what I think. If you think those flowers are awesome, go ahead and vote for it. I won't hold it against you. The next cover we're going to look at is Sink by C. Schmidt. And It's not the most dynamic cover. I actually like the font choice in this particular area, mostly because of how super simple everything is. If you have super simple cover concepts, then you can get a little more wonky with your text, and you're not affecting readability. I like the color. I look, it's cool. You put the little flare in the center of the eyeball. The color of the eye is very, very interesting. But all in all, I love the color of this cover, and that color is what draws me to it. There's a little movement with the light, the light pattern moving along the base of the cover, but ultimately it's an eye with some text. But the color really brings that to life. So that's my opinion on that cover. Next cover we're going to talk about is another profile. That is Natural Disaster by, I think it's Jana Ruth. It might be Jana Ruth. If you know the proper pronunciation, please let me know. And if I'm not saying it correctly, forgive me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm more than willing to hear the right way to say that name. I just don't know it off the top of my head. The one thing you always note when you have a landscape that has like this, so you got this burning city or this burning caldera. I'm not really sure what that is in the background, which is something that someone should work on. You need to make sure the elements in your design are elements the viewer can interpret. Otherwise, it degrades the overall quality. Look, I still have it as one of my favorite 7 ones I looked at today. But that is something to note. That tangent's over. The other tangent, so I have tangents and tangents. If you watch this enough, you'll understand it. This view is only possible if the person looking at the footage has another light source. So you got a light behind the subject, which would normally create what's called a silhouette. But in this case, we wanted to identify with the subject more. There is a technique to do that. We call it fill flash, where you use a flash to fill in the shadow of the human so that it's not a silhouette. So even though as a viewer, you have to assume that that's what's happening, or that there's some other light source coming and lighting that figure as well. Some people get bothered by an image that looks like this without some explanation on where the other light comes from. I am not that persnickety in terms of that. I love the color of the hair, and I love the energy that the hair has created. But I gotta say a thing. As cool as that energy is, I don't know what's causing it. So for hair to move like that, there either needs to be a lot of wind, which would mean the smoke and there'd be other elements flowing in that direction, or that person would have to be in motion. So there need to be more energy. The figure would have to be moving across the frame. So while I really love the energy of the hair, you know, there's it's movement that doesn't make logical sense when I look at the frame. And so I'm looking at hair that's moving, and I'm not seeing what's causing that hair to move, and that bugs the daylights out of me. So I would have accounted for that by causing some swirls of the flame in the background to kind of swirl along with it, so that, you know, she's standing and facing a pretty stern wind, something of that sort. I don't know if the character wears any sort of clothing that would also respond to the wind, but that would help. You put a little tassel at the end of that staff, and you can have some really cool things going on there. So I like it visually, but it doesn't make sense visually, which happens sometimes when you are talking about art and book covers. The castle in the background is pretty cool. It's really epic looking. Everything kind of flows together. And even if the hair doesn't make sense, it's still kind of cool to see. And so that's kind of all I can think about with that particular cover. One more to go. This is Portal by Kristen Painter and Bruno Miller. And this particular cover is also all about color. We got this really unique color pattern with this silhouette in the foreground. Maybe it's the eye of a tornado or a storm of some kind, or it's a portal, and that portal is opening up, and we're about to jump into that portal. I love the detail in the portal. I love the detail in the landscape. I like silhouettes, so I enjoy that. I think the title text is well placed and legible. The author text is well placed and legible. The title text is well placed, but I'm not a fan of that particular green. It's too bright. It's too vibrant. I don't see where it's coming from. I think that it should be something, from this more muted area, or this green here. My problem is that clash of colors is not my favorite. But when that's my only problem with a cover, you can kind of give it a shrug and acknowledge that overall it's nice, even though the title text kind of degrades it rather than supporting it. But it doesn't diminish the quality of the art or the other things going on there. Like I said, that's all 7 covers. So again, there are 2 links down there. There is the January book cover of the month that you can vote for, and I hope you do. And then there is the first week of the February book cover of the month, which you can vote for, and I hope you do. I also hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful time. I wish you all the best. And as always, God be with you. See you later.